Hey everyone, MarsJ8 here, bringing you a brand new game review. We're not going to be really reviewing a game today, more along the lines of its expansion. We are, of course, talking about Fallout 4's latest DLC expansion, Nuka-World. And let me tell you, it has got to be one of the most creative and fun-looking places to explore out of any of the Fallout 4 locations, including anything we saw in Far Harbor DLC, which, let's be honest, those were all pretty much boring. Anyways, it has incredibly well-designed parks, a bunch of new items, weapons, and gears. It has mini-games, it has rides you can hop on, it has collectibles, it has new enemies, it has enjoyable side missions that are actually pretty damn rewarding, and it has a new crafting system for Nuka-Colas. In general, the expansion is incredibly fun to explore and play through, and it definitely feels like a place you want to vacation to at some point in time, even with all its questionable morality standards, such as accepting grants from Vault-Tec. Its story and its strength of its player choices, however, is taking the fucking piss. I'm not even gonna lie. Basically, I went into this expansion thinking that Nuka-World was going to act like a lot smaller version of Far Harbor, where you're going to have to make choices and pick sides among these three raider factions, and while this does exist in a sense, it is nowhere near as fleshed out as it was in the original Fallout 4 or the Far Harbor expansion factions were. Each of the raider factions are all equally twisted and evil, and none of them really seem to have any moral standpoint towards the choices you make. On top of that, your choices seem to be very vague and make no difference whatsoever. I originally went in thinking that I would eventually be given the option to convince the leaders of the raiders down a more moral route, like Bethesda has almost always done. What I really wanted was to convince the raiders to free the traders and then set up Nuka-World as a booming center for trade. Thinking about that now just makes me laugh at how weak the player choices and dialogue were throughout the entire expansion. Dialogue choices almost entirely consisted of 1. Okay, let's do it. 2. Can you explain this? 3. Some smart-ass comment. Or 4. I'll think about it / go fuck yourself. The only real way of making choices that determines the raider faction that you side with is who gets the most locations. There is a good route, there is, but the option is so weak and lazy that it's a joke. Basically, your task is to kill the raider leaders, and the game purposefully misdirects you about how you go about doing this. The person that gives you the mission, she's a doctor in the market, straight out tells you that all you have to do is kill the leaders of the faction, and that's it. Well, when you even kill one of them, even in stealth, every raider and their fucking granny immediately finds out and turns against you, sending you into a one-man/woman war against an entire town that's bigger than Diamond City. And after you do finish off all the leaders and all the raiders in the town, that's it. Seriously, that's it. There's no more missions after that, except for the side missions and turning the power back on. So basically, you either have about a 7-hour campaign for the raiders, or you have about a 1-hour mission to free the traders. In the end, I just felt like there could have been so much more added to the choices you make, where if you wanted to take that evil route, it was definitely open for you, but if you wanted to take that moral route that didn't involve you slaughtering an entire town, it would have also been open to you. Now, I wouldn't have as much of an issue with this and the expansion as I do, especially with how fun it is to explore with its side quests and the cool new armors you can gain from the factions, had they not gotten a bright idea to make the Raider questline directly affect the original Commonwealth and its factions. What I mean by that is that there are side missions given to you by the faction leaders that take you to the Commonwealth, and on some of the missions, mostly the ones that involve you enslaving people, can actually turn an entire town against you. And if you're thinking, oh, well, I just won't do those missions then, well, I have some bad news for you, especially if you're someone who has sided with the Minutemen. There's a certain point in the main questline for the Raiders that involves you going into the Commonwealth and taking over settlements, and you won't progress the quest until you do it. If you're like me, who has spent hours upon hours doing all the Minutemen missions, gaining all the settlements, and eventually becoming the general of the Minutemen, it can become incredibly frustrating when you take over one of the settlements for the Raiders and see that Preston Garvey immediately hates you and is no longer a viable companion. I would also assume that this affects other character relations with you, but I haven't tried that out yet. What this means is that the Raiders are essentially a fourth faction to the original story. They're directly against the Minutemen, the Railroad, and the Institute. I would also assume that they would be directly against the Brotherhood as well, but I have yet to get a mission that puts me at odds with them. This pisses me off for a couple of reasons. One is that this expansion was supposed to primarily focus on the 3 raider gangs and taking over the park, which in itself is already a bit of a pain in the ass, and then eventually turning the power back on. Guess what? You can't turn the power back on for the raiders until after you take over at least 3 settlements in the Commonwealth, or you take the good route. And 2, if there are going to be raider missions that have direct effects on the relationship between Preston and the character, and even include new dialogue for Preston at his utter distaste for the player's choices, then why isn't there an optional mission for the Minutemen to help take over Nuka-World and free the traitors, like they had with the Brotherhood in Far Harbor? I don't know, that one just confused me a little bit, but there are a number of other complaints that I have for this DLC, such as never really feeling like I'm an actual leader who's in control of 3 gangs. From the leaders of the gangs always giving me these bullshit fetch quest errand missions and talking to me like I'm lower than them, to even the grunts saying disrespectful things to me, it just felt like there was a complete lack of respect for their overboss. I also kind of wish that they had included more arcade games because other than the shooting gallery and the Wakakami, the other games don't really function that well. It would have been incredibly awesome to have like a row of arcade games so that were all just the games you can find for your Pip-Boy throughout the game. That would have been awesome. There are also a number of times that there have been quite large lag spikes, and the game has crashed on me a couple of times, but I think that's mostly because I'm running it on a PlayStation 4 console. Yeah, I know I need a PC, but when I figure out how to build one and set it up properly, I'll look into it. I feel like if you want to get the most enjoyment out of this expansion, you either need to want to take that evil side, not care about the original factions, especially the Minutemen, and not be concerned about the settlements, or you just need to pick up and start a new game and just pick them as your faction. Now, I'm not sure if they have any missions for the raiders that involve you taking down one of the other factions directly, so you might need to side with another faction as well in order to progress the story. Also, one of the problems of jumping right into the raider faction is that Nuka-World is actually set at a much higher difficulty than most of the game. It actually doesn't even unlock the option for you to visit it until I think you're level 35, and even then, it's still pretty damn hard at that level. Hell, being at level 87 with most of my abilities to deal out serious punishment and sponge a ton of damage being maxed out, there were still times when I was paying attention and getting rocked. So that's just something to keep in mind. In the end, though, I can't praise this expansion enough at how enjoyable it is to explore all the parks in the location. And yes, some of the raider missions are actually fun too, and there are a number of interesting characters like the new companion, Porter Gage. So this expansion definitely has that fun factor to it. But in terms of a decent story, and in terms of making the player feel like their choices actually have an impact to them on the story itself, it just falls completely flat on its face. If you're looking for that new and exciting place to explore, or you just want some just straight out evil side that wasn't really present in the standard game, then I feel like this DLC will work for you. But if you want something that is actually has your choices making some kind of a difference and opening up new possible endings, then this just isn't it, and that's disappointing. So for my final score, I give Fallout 4 Nuka-World a 5 out of 10. Please remember, though, that these are just the opinions of one man on the internet with the divine powers of a PlayStation 4, the internet, and a passion for gaming. If you agree or disagree, I'd love to hear why. If you enjoyed this video and want to leave a like before you go, it will always be greatly appreciated. And if you want to see more of these reviews or just want to join the team, feel free to hit the subscribe button. Thank you all for joining me, and I will see you all on the next one. Mars out.
Oh, that's disgusting. That is fucking disgusting, man. Ugh.